Hey everybody! In today's tutorial, I'm going to take a look at a host set from the upcoming Stampin' Up! Catalog and the Zig Clean Color markers. I want you to really get a good picture of how these things work because they are so much fun to color with. This image that I chose is nice and big and gives me tons of space to do a little no-line watercoloring. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm starting with Pear Pizzazz ink, and the reason I chose this color ink, you know I like to use a yellow, is because I'm going to go with sort of a hydrangea color scheme. And on the blue hydrangeas, there's always just a touch of green at the edge of each petal. And then of course the foliage is green. So it'll make a nice blend to the way I'm going to color it. Now off camera I did stamp it off once, so it's not full strength. And this is on some very heavy Arches hot press watercolor paper. It's still got a little bit of texture, but overall pretty smooth for stamping. Now the paper that I stamped off on, I'm going to use as a guide. Since some of the detail gets lost as I start to do no-line watercolor, I need something to reference so that I know that I'm painting a petal instead of painting a leaf, or what the general shape of the flowers are. So I start each petal, and I do one petal at a time. I start with the turquoise marker, of course, everything starts with turquoise. And then I'm going back with this orchid color in the center, just to preserve that hydrangea feel. Even though this isn't a hydrangea, as far as I know, I don't know what it is. We're going to call it a dealy bopper flower. But I'm coloring it like a hydrangea because the great thing about stamping is you can create your own reality. This might be why you know so many stampers. Just a thought. So you'll see as I color these how beautifully I can blend these two colors together. Doesn't matter what colors you use. They are so blendable and nice. And I'm just blending marker to marker. I'm not adding any water here. So I'm going to speed this up just a little bit. And I'm going to do every petal pretty much the same way. Put down the blue, add the little orchid, blend out with blue, and then I'm going to rim each petal with a little bit of a nice light chartreuse. These blend in a way that's very similar to alcohol markers, or at least that's sort of the technique that I'm using with them. Light, dark, light, feather out. And I think if you're used to coloring with the alcohol markers, I think you'll really, really like these because they behave in a very similar way. They're really beautiful and fun to work with. The brush tip is really super unique. And it'll lead to kind of a different coloring style for you, I think, than you're used to, you know, a porous point marker and kind of guarding that porous point and not treating it like a paintbrush. These you can really treat like a paintbrush, and it's super fun once you get the hang of it. And the color is just so vivid and great. Of course, you know, I tend to gravitate towards the same colors over and over, but these are so vivid and highly pigmented that it's just a lot of fun. As I continue around the flower, you'll see that I just leave the caps off my markers. Again, that's kind of an alcohol marker habit that I'm in. But you definitely, you know, they're more blendable when they're wet, and so you don't want to leave the ink sitting on the watercolor paper for too long. My next experiment is going to be to try them on different kinds of cardstock. So far I've only worked on watercolor paper because I like the images that I'm using. I really like the watercolor look of them. But I'll do some other experiments and let you know how that goes. Jennifer McGuire also has some videos on these on her blog, and I'm sure she's used different substrates. She's a good tester. Around the edges, I'm okay with adding just a little bit less detail. I want the petals in the front to stand out the most. But I do want to make sure that everything gets a little touch of green at the end. That's one of the things that keeps this just from sort of being a blob. since I don't have any hard lines from the stamp left anymore, I need to create that separation with color. And that's how I'm doing it. Now, if I come back with just pure orchid towards the centers of the Dealy Bopper flowers, it gives it a nice level of contrast and sort of indicates a flower center where I've removed that detail. Now, if you look closely at the stamp, you'll see that their Dealy Bopper flower has actually little things, little wiggly things with other things on them. But I've removed all that detail with the watercoloring. And so to make it look more hydrangea-y, I'm just going with that darker flower center. Now for the foliage, I don't want it really to be the star of the show. And I want it to have the same colors that are in the flower. So I'm using both greens and blues, but you don't want it to be too similar. So a little pop of yellow and orange really finish it off and give you that complementary color scheme that makes things sort of stand out to your eye. Now, if you're careful with the orange, which is one of my favorite things to use with foliage, you can really preserve that nice pop of a complementary color without it getting muddy. So you want to do as little blending as possible, but you do want to blend it slightly into the green, just not so much that it turns brown. So there you have a watercolored Dealy Bopper flower. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks so much for watching.